All right, we're at 1 o'clock right now, so I think I'll go ahead and kick this off. Welcome everyone to ForeFlight is bringing it all together for business aviation. I'm Sam Taylor. I'm ForeFlight's content marketing manager. So that means I write a lot of emails and do a lot of web page updates, and I also make all of our feature tutorial videos. So if you've ever watched any of those for ForeFlight, then you've probably heard my voice before. This presentation is sort of in contrast to the other presentations we've been doing at the show. This one's going to be a very high-level look at some of these new products that we've recently introduced and how they all fit together into the ForeFlight ecosystem and really build on each other to make your life in a flight department easier, whether you're a flight planner, a dispatcher, or a pilot. In contrast to the other presentations, which are going much more in-depth on details of various different features. So our agenda for today is going to be starting off with an overview of ForeFlight's product ecosystem, like I mentioned. And that will include ForeFlight Dispatch, which we first introduced at this show 2 years ago in 2019. That will go into some of the scheduling and trip support integrations with Dispatch, and also the ForeFlight Mobile integration, which allows flight planners to release flight plans directly to ForeFlight Mobile from Dispatch. From there, we'll also look at Runway Analysis, our brand new weight and balance capability, integrated weight and balance, I should say, which we just recently introduced, as well as the upcoming Fuel Advisor feature, which is an integrated tankering solution, and our EAPIs solution, which is available now. And then we will finish it up with some wrap-up and Q&A. Before we actually get to looking at ForeFlight's product ecosystem, I want to start with a little sort of anecdote about the early history of ForeFlight that I think kind of illustrates the direction that we're currently heading and how we got started in that direction. So when Tyson Wise and Jason Miller, our co-founders, first started ForeFlight, they originally developed it for the Apple iPhone when it was first released in 2007. And especially once the App Store was released and they were able to start developing apps that weren't basically just using the iPhone's web browser, they started developing all these different capabilities. And the original plan was actually to have multiple separate apps for each of these capabilities. So for example, they originally created ForeFlight as an aviation weather app. And so they had the aviation weather. They also created a AFD app for the iPad when it came out. They created a checklist app for the iPhone. They created a flight planning app, as well as a ForeFlight World Edition, and a charts app. So they went and created all these different apps as they were developing these capabilities, and pretty soon, they came to realize that this was not a sustainable or really practical way of developing a good app for pilots. And that led them to where we are today, which is they combined all of these capabilities into ForeFlight Mobile. And so that's why we call ForeFlight the integrated flight app. It has all of these different capabilities integrated into one app. And that drive towards integration and recognizing the benefits that come from that is really what a lot of this presentation is going to be about, because one of the big things we're trying to solve today, whereas when ForeFlight first started, it was very much a general aviation product. Today, we're trying to solve these kinds of issues for flight departments and business aviation, where you have a very fragmented ecosystem of products and solutions that flight departments use. And our goal over the past several years has been developing solutions that bring all of those different products together into one unified ecosystem. And so here it is. This is a graphic that I believe is included in all of the other presentations we've been given so far. And it is a really good just graphical illustration of this whole ecosystem. So as you can see, at the center is ForeFlight Dispatch, especially when it comes to business aviation. This is the center of everything. It's what really ties together all of these different capabilities. ForeFlight supports integrated scheduling systems, so you can schedule flight plans, and those are automatically integrated in Dispatch. We'll talk about that in just a minute. It also supports integrated trip support, and so you can see Jeppesen ITPS there at the bottom. We do also support some other providers. And of course, it integrates with ForeFlight Mobile to release flight plans to the app. In addition to that, around on those four corners, we have some of the other capabilities I'll be talking about: our runway analysis, weight and balance, tankering, and EAPIs solutions. And so I hope that at the end of this presentation, you'll have a good understanding of all of these different products we're offering and how they all fit together at a pretty high level to just make your life as a flight planner or pilot easier. Before we get into that, I want to hit some of the kind of high-level values that our entire ecosystem provides. So this isn't just dispatch or just ForeFlight Mobile, but really the combined package of all of these things. So ForeFlight is cloud native. That means that it's high availability and high performance capabilities. And so again, that's not only for dispatch, but also for ForeFlight Mobile. And that means that, for example, there isn't one set of servers where if those go down, then everything stops working. We are integrated with AWS, and so that ensures that we are always going to be available as long as the services that are providing us information are also available. ForeFlight is integrated. Again, that's kind of the whole theme of this presentation, in the integration. And so that's an essential capability here. We're consolidating the mobile app, the web app, and dispatch, and these other capabilities into something that really works with each other and allows communication and transferring of information between all of these different services. ForeFlight is collaborative. This was one of the essential capabilities of dispatch when we first introduced it, was taking flight planning from being something that one pilot does either on the mobile app or on the web, and then they can maybe share the flight plan with other pilots, and turning it into something where you have a truly collaborative solution where many different flight planners, many different pilots can all collaborate on flight plans and share them with each other seamlessly. ForeFlight is extensible, and this is another very important aspect of dispatch, is the APIs that integrate scheduling systems, trip support providers in various different ways. And so this is a crucial capability that allows us to integrate with external parties and allows them, we publish our APIs, so anyone with a scheduling system or a trip support integration can go and check those out and see what they need to implement to support that integration with us. And finally, ForeFlight is automated. This is, again, a very essential capability where we want to, as much as possible, reduce the manual workload on any pilot and any flight planner. When you have certain aspects of a workflow where it's all kind of streamlined, we want to make sure that pilots aren't doing any of the number crunching, they're not having to manually handle those things, and that allows them to focus on the really important decisions and the important things that they need to be looking at as part of that flight plan. And you'll see some aspects of this automation in a lot of the products we look at. And so the results of this is that everything is just done faster and with fewer errors. That's really what we set out to do with introducing dispatch and introducing all of these other products. We want to integrate these capabilities because that means that you don't have to do things like send emails with flight plan information. You don't have to make phone calls to let your dispatcher know that they need to change something. All of this stuff, when it's integrated into a single ecosystem, allows everything to happen much more smoothly, much more efficiently, more quickly, and with fewer errors. So, first up with dispatch, we're going to look at the scheduling and flights integrations. So the scheduling integration, here's a list of the supported schedulers we have. We're always looking to integrate with more. Like I said, our APIs are published online, so any scheduling service can get that process started. And the graphic you see there is a great illustration of how this works, where within the scheduling system, all you have to do is schedule a flight, and using our API, that scheduling system will automatically feed those flight details into dispatch, create a new flight plan in dispatch with all of the key ingredients like the pilot, the departure and destination airport, the aircraft. All of that gets automatically created, and that allows flight planners or self-dispatching pilots to immediately go in and start working on that flight plan to get it finished. Another aspect of this scheduling integration is the flights API. And this is very interesting in the sense that it's not utilized quite as much, and it's not known quite as much as the actual schedule API, but it's very, very flexible and very powerful if you can develop some ways to use it. So essentially, as you can see, the schedule API takes scheduled flights from the scheduling system into dispatch. The flights API takes information in dispatch and allows it to be sent elsewhere. And there's no limit to what you can do with this, really. So I've heard of some operations who have implemented, they've improved their customer quotes because they can use dispatch's really highly accurate performance engine to calculate very, very accurate flight time and fuel burn, and use that to create better and more accurate prices for their customers. You can also do things like integrate those capabilities, the performance engine and that kind of accuracy, back into the scheduling system to allow the schedulers to actually get a better sense of how long the flight is going to take and what it's going to end up costing in terms of fuel. So it's a very interesting aspect of this API, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other use cases we get out of it. Next up, we have the trip support integration, and this came after the original scheduling integration. We currently integrate with Jeppesen ITPS, Honeywell Forge, and UAS International Trip Support. And this is another one of the really flexible and really capable integrations, in the sense that what the trip support integration allows you to do is give authenticated users of your preferred trip support service direct access into dispatch. And so they can log into your dispatch account essentially just as one of your flight planners would, and work directly with those flight plans. And so rather than having to rely on email communication or exchanging documents back and forth, you can really determine exactly how much you want that trip support to be working with the flight plans. So it could be something as simple as they just log in to upload some documents to the flight plan, which are then delivered to the pilots. Or it could be as heavy utilization as the trip support is going in and actually planning flights from start to finish. So when I say flexibility, what I mean is we give you the opportunity to allow your flight support provider to just log in and work with flights, and then you decide how much you want them to actually be doing in there. So here we have just some of the advanced flight planning capabilities that Dispatch provides. I'll just run through a few of these. Like I said, it's intended to be really the hub of collaborative flight planning for a flight department. Everything is tied together using underlying performance, weather, and mission data. This is something you'll see with some of the products later on, where all of these products, all of these features are utilizing the exact same data. And that means that you're going to get very consistent answers from all of them, and it means they can all feed into each other to provide even more accurate calculations. We'll talk about integrated runway analysis and fuel advisor in a bit. It does support very fast Eurocontrol valid optimized routing, and so if you're going to be flying in Europe, it can come back with a Eurocontrol valid route very, very quickly. And the same applies anywhere else you're flying. The recommended route is a feature that will optimize a route for flight time and fuel burn. And in the US, it will actually also optimize for the likelihood that it will be cleared as filed. So we look at all of the flight plans that have been cleared by ATC, and we have, I think at this point, it's over a 95% cleared as filed rate. So when you get that recommended route, it's over a 95% chance that you will be cleared as filed using that route. One of the great capabilities that Dispatch supports is route constraints. And so some of those are avoid and via. So you can say you want to avoid a specific waypoint or go via a waypoint. You can also do oceanic tracks. You can avoid FIRs. And what that does is it essentially guides the recommended route in how it determines the most optimized route. So for example, you can say you want to avoid, if you're flying into the Middle East and you want to make sure you're avoiding Iranian airspace, you can avoid that entire FIR, and then Dispatch will generate a route that avoids it. And so it's very, very flexible in allowing you to kind of gently direct it in how you want it to be optimized without you having to go in and actually, plan out that flight waypoint by waypoint. As we'll see later, dispatch supports EAPIs. It also supports ETOPS and ETP planning for transatlantic flights or just oceanic flights in general. You can change en route fuel weight and altitude per leg. Right now, actually, I think it's mainly just altitude, so you can, for example, preempt ATC instructions if you know that they're going to have you go down to a lower altitude when you're coming in on the arrival. It does support global rain prediction, and as I said, a lot of team-based features in terms of sharing and flight releases. And unlike ForeFlight Mobile, which is only on Apple products, only on iPhones and iPads, dispatch will work on any modern browser. So you don't just have to use it on an iMac like you can see here. You can use it on any Windows computer or anything, as long as you're using an up-to-date browser. So now we'll take a look at some of the capabilities in ForeFlight Mobile, because again, one of the key aspects of dispatch is that you plan a flight there and then release it to your pilots in ForeFlight. And so once you do that, the really powerful features of ForeFlight Mobile come into play. And I'm not going to be talking too much about ForeFlight Mobile during this presentation, since I'm kind of focusing on the dispatch-oriented features, but it's important to remember that ForeFlight Mobile is still, one of the centerpieces of this whole thing. And dispatch and all this other stuff wouldn't mean very much if you didn't have ForeFlight Mobile for the pilots to use to conduct the actual flight. So ForeFlight supports a customizable navlog and briefing. That's something you can do in dispatch. You can actually customize the navlog using a drag and drop editor, using many different types of modules. Very, very flexible, like I said before. As well as different types of briefings. You have the option to include or exclude certain types of briefing information in the standard briefing that's delivered to your pilots when you release the flight. We recently it was several months ago, but we introduced a new plates workflow, taking inspiration from Jeppesen Mobile Flight Deck, actually. And so this is the flight binders. And this is a great new capability that really streamlines the process of organizing and accessing your plates before a flight. And of course, as well as that, we do have geo-referenced Jeppesen plates in ForeFlight if you link a Jeppesen account or if you purchase them through ForeFlight. Integrated runway analysis. We'll get to runway analysis on its own here in a bit, but again, that is a capability. Unlike some of the other capabilities I'll be talking about, which require you to have ForeFlight dispatch, runway analysis is one feature that you can purchase even if you don't have dispatch. As long as you have ForeFlight Mobile, you can purchase runway analysis by aircraft type and use it directly in ForeFlight. ForeFlight supports airport 3D as well as different 3D capabilities like 3D flights and 3D flight preview and review, as well as airport 3D with runway lighting. This is something we introduced earlier this year, so that it's a night mode you can enable that then displays the runway lights at pretty much every airport worldwide, as well as integrated traffic via FlightAware, as you can see there. Industry-leading weather visualization, that's always been one of the key aspects of ForeFlight. Like I said, the very first thing that ForeFlight did when it was first founded was essentially, be a weather app. And so that has always been one of the central focuses of our app development. One of the really great new features we introduced is the dynamic global winds. This is something that's available with ForeFlight performance plans, and it allows you to view both wind speed and wind temperature around the entire world using a very, very pretty and very cool to watch visualization technique, where if you've ever used the website Windly, it's very similar to that. We also support global icing and turbulence, as well as integrated document management via cloud documents. And again, that's one of the older capabilities we've had for flight departments, so that you can manage the documents that your pilots have access to, but it is consistently, one of the most important features. So all of these combine to just allow the concurrent use of dispatch and ForeFlight to really boost the workflows of any flight department, in the sense of being able to do all of the advanced planning on dispatch and then release it to ForeFlight, where you can then start utilizing those really advanced in-flight weather features, airport 3D, all of these other things I just showed. So that's it for dispatch. Now we're going to move into some of these other 4 capabilities, which each of these is a separate product that we recently introduced. Well, not weight and balance, that's not a separate purchase, but the rest of these are separate products which are integrated with ForeFlight and dispatch. So starting with Runway Analysis, this was something we introduced early this year, I believe. And so it's, like I said before, it is fully integrated with ForeFlight Mobile and ForeFlight Dispatch. And really the goal is just to simplify this workflow of calculating runway performance and ensuring that you can get off the ground safely. One of the great benefits of this, as with any of these other features, is that it's so tightly integrated with the rest of your flight planning workflow that it is continuously calculating the results of your takeoff calculations. So you can calculate your takeoff, go back and mess around with your payload, your passengers, change the time of departure. You can even go in and manually change the weather conditions, if you want to see whether you'll be able to get off the ground if it's 10 degrees warmer or cooler. And ForeFlight is continuously calculating these results. So no matter what you're doing, within seconds, you'll be able to see the results of those calculations and confirm that you'll be able to get off the ground safely. We have been developing new engine out procedures, and I believe we now support over 6,000 of them at many airports around the world. These are optimized RNAV-based procedures, and the goal of these is to optimize your maximum takeoff weight. And not only that, but the way we build these, we have a dedicated team that designs these using some very complicated proprietary software. The goal when they design this is, whenever possible, to have them follow existing instrument departures. And so that way you can, when you're going to have to fly this procedure, you can just load up the SID, and the first few waypoints should follow that SID. And so just to reduce the pilot workload and ensure that you can quickly get that procedure loaded. So here's an example of one of the EOPs out of Eagle County. Runway Analysis also supports landing factors. The landing analysis is a little bit more simple than the takeoff analysis, in that you're not having to look at quite as many obstacles, but the landing factor is a very important aspect of that, where you can determine what landing factor you want to use, and those will correspond to 60 and 80% of total usable runway requirements. So whatever your op spec tells you that you need to be using in terms of multiplying the calculated distance by this factor, ForeFlight supports all of those, as well as a custom factor, which isn't shown here, but it is available if you want to set up a factor that isn't one of those listed. And lastly, with Runway Analysis, we have a summary document, and this is something you'll also see with weight and balance, this kind of summary document. And so this provides a detailed breakdown of both the takeoff and the landing analyses, along with scenario planning. And at the very bottom of the iPad screenshot there, you can see that it's actually comparing the calculated performance on both of the runways at the departure airport. And so that just allows you to see what your performance is going to be coming off of each one of those. Here's a list of our currently supported aircraft models for Runway Analysis. We're always looking to integrate more, and so you can expect this list to grow quite a lot in the coming months. So next up, we have weight and balance. And this is something that a lot of you probably received an email about this just yesterday, I believe. And so we just introduced it. And in contrast to our previous weight and balance solution, this is something that is truly integrated with your flight planning. And this is a feature request we've been hearing for a very long time. The previous weight and balance solution was very much separated from the rest of your flight planning. You could plug in the flight details, plug in the estimated fuel burn, and it would show you your weight and balance graph. but it wasn't truly integrated with your flight planning. And so the goal here is to make it a much more seamless solution, as well as supporting some additional capabilities that are going to be really relevant for business operations. So starting off, we have hundreds of pre-built weight and balance templates, but both for piston aircraft, as we had before with the previous weight and balance, but also for many very popular business jets. And so here you can see this is a Challenger 300, and we support, right now you can see it's just the one template there, but for many other aircraft we do support multiple templates, and all of those come from the AFM, the templates defined there. And of course, all of these are totally user editable. So if we don't support a template for your aircraft, you can create a blank template and set up each station manually. This is one of the new capabilities we now support with this new weight and balance, basic operating weight support. We didn't have this before with the previous capability, but what you can do now is as you're setting up your weight and balance profile, you can go in and select which stations you want to include in the basic operating weight, as well as specify a particular weight value for that station. And then you can see sort of near the top of the screen, you have both the basic empty weight and the basic operating weight. And so all of that is fed into the flight planning, and it just means you don't have to go in and manually specify those weights every time, since you want that to be automatically included. Once again, like I said before, this is seamlessly integrated with your flight planning. And so this little video just shows you how it's directly integrated with the payload section in ForeFlight. You can see you have the basic operating weight stations there, and then you can tap in and view the actual weight and balance calculation there. This is where you go in and modify those stations, change the weights, add new ones, and you can see in real time how those changes will affect your changing weight and center of gravity during the flight. And lastly, we have a load manifest document. As you saw with Runway Analysis, we can generate this very detailed document that includes all of the inputs and outputs of the weight and balance calculation. And significantly, if you look at the very bottom there, you can see that it also includes a signature line. So you can sign and date the document and save it on your device, for regulatory compliance. And so this was one of the big requests that we were getting was to have a document like this. And so this is directly built in to the weight and balance capability. Now, just to clarify, this weight and balance requires a ForeFlight performance subscription. So if you have business performance, you can access this right now. If you don't have business performance, you will be able to access like this load summary and some aspects of the new weight and balance, but it won't be directly integrated with your flight planning unless you have the performance plan. And if you're an individual customer and not a business customer, this capability will be coming in a few months. Next up, we're going to move on to tankering. And this is something that is not yet available. We're hoping to make it available by the end of this year. So Fuel Advisor is what we're calling this. And this is a really neat solution for kind of optimizing your fuel tankering and finding the optimal solution there. One of the great things about this is that you don't have to go in and manually say which legs you want to be included in this tankering calculation. Dispatch will automatically look at your planned flights with the same aircraft, and when you have a number of closely spaced flights, it will automatically include them in that tankering calculation. And so this is all done automatically, and you just have to click the Fuel Advisor button to load up this page and start working on these details. One great aspect of this is that it provides a lot of insight into the calculation that's being done. So here you can see each one of these little sections corresponds to a different airport. And so you can see the total uplifted quantity of fuel at each airport, the cost of that fuel, whether there's a facility fee. Right now we don't have any, but that is an essential input into this calculation. And then you can also see the total trip fuel increase based on that uplift quantity. And so you can see that if you're going to uplift this amount of fuel at this airport, it's going to add 19 pounds per 1,000 pounds of fuel to your total trip fuel. this is similar to something that ForeFlight and Dispatch have already done, which is just the capability, for example, to specify a landing fuel quantity that you want to have in the tanks at your destination airport, and it will take that quantity and then determine how much additional fuel is needed to transport it and add that to your total fuel. So there's kind of a similar calculation being done here, just in terms of giving you insight into how much additional fuel you're going to have to carry in order to tanker that much at that airport. It also integrates weight and balance and runway limits. And so even though this capability is appears to be separate from those other capabilities, it is directly looking at those outputs. And so as you modify the uplifted fuel quantity at each airport, ForeFlight is running that runway analysis calculation, and it's running the weight and balance calculation to make sure that you don't exceed any of your aircraft structural limits or the runway analysis limits based on that tankering. And so this is really useful because it means you don't have to set up your tankering and then go back and rerun your weight and balance, rerun your runway analysis. All of that is being done in the background for you. And if you exceed the limit of any of these, one of these numbers will turn red to let you know that. And even if you don't exceed the limit, if you get close to it, it will turn orange, I believe. And so then just to let you know that you're pretty close to a particular limit based on the uplifted fuel quantity. And last up, of course, you have the really important number here, which is the savings you get based on the tankering plan. Something I haven't shown here, which is an essential component, is that Dispatch will automatically calculate the optimal tankering solution. And so once you've set up the airports that are going to be involved, once you have all the aircraft loaded and all this, you just hit recommend tankering, and it will look at all of the inputs and calculate how much fuel you need to uplift at each airport, based not only on the distance between the airports and the cost of fuel, but also the facility fees. And if that fee is going to be waived at a certain quantity of fuel, it will incorporate all of that and find the most optimal tankering plan that will get you the most savings. All right, and so last up here, we have EAPIs. And like I mentioned, this is something that is available right now. I'll go ahead and get right into it. It's if you're flying into Mexico or the Caribbean, then this is something you should be interested in because those are the countries we currently support for it, as you can see there. One of the capabilities of this is it allows you to enter crew and passenger information right in Dispatch, and then it will save that information for later use. And so all of this information is saved in a very secure data system that we recently set up. And so you don't have to worry about that sensitive information being at any sort of risk. We support both private and commercial operations for this, and so you can select the type of flight that this is going to be, and that will allow you to then input the necessary details in terms of the aircraft owner and decal number information. You can see that at the bottom of the screenshot there. And lastly, once again, we export these manifest and GenDeck documents based on the EAPIS you've set up. And so this allows you, these documents are automatically attached to the flight plan so that when the flight is released to pilots, they will automatically have access to it. And that goes as well, I believe, for the other ones, the runway analysis and the weight and balance documents. All of those can very easily be attached to the flight plan so that they'll automatically be uploaded to pilots. So we're just about to wrap up here. I wanted to bring back up this graphic just to give you another view of how all of these fit together. We release new features at such a rate that it can be dizzying even for us who spend all of our day working on this stuff. And so from the customer's perspective, a piece of feedback we often hear is, you guys move so fast and introduce so much stuff, it's just hard to keep up with it. And so that's really what I wanted this presentation to provide, is this overview of all of these different capabilities so you can get this bird's eye view of all of this and see how they all fit together. I highly recommend at 2:30 Caitlin will be doing a Dispatch 201 presentation, a kind of a follow-on to the 101 that she did yesterday, and that will go in depth into both tankering and EAPIS, and so you can actually see the process of setting those up and what those interfaces look like. And she'll also be doing an overview of some of the recent dispatch features unrelated to those two. So highly recommend sticking around or coming back in an hour to check out that presentation. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to Q&A. Just some quick information here. We are at booth 2635. You can't miss us if you're just walking down the center aisle in the main hall. You can email sales@foreflight.com if you want to, if you have any questions about purchasing, pricing, and especially when it comes to the pricing of any of those products. If you need any help, you can email success@foreflight.com. They're our dedicated customer success team, and especially when it comes to business aviation and flight departments, they provide, kind of a more advanced level of customer support than the standard support team, which you can also email at team@foreflight.com. And lastly, you can learn more about our products for business aviation at foreflight.com/business. So, do we have any questions?
When do they plan to add Canada to the EAPIs?
I am not sure about that. I know that we do want to expand the countries we support for that, but right now I think it's just the U.S., Mexico, and the Caribbean.
A couple of questions. One is, do we get charged every time we use EAPIS, or do we use it all the time?
No, it's a yearly fee, just like dispatch and these other ones.
Okay, and our company is very concerned about cybersecurity, and so we have very few authorized programs that work in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Are there, I'm not an IT guy, but are there is there a standard that you meet that will be accepted by those protocols for power companies?
I am also not an IT guy, and so I can't give an answer to that. But if you drop by our booth later, I imagine there's someone who can shed some light on that question.
I can answer that. Travis Rick with a product at ForeFlight. I lead our military programs, so as you can imagine, it's kind of quite a bit of an event.
Yeah.
We're compliant with the NIST 800 series of cybersecurity standards, and we're working on FedRAMP and Mongo certification as well.
Okay, so
There you go.
who could I put in our company in contact with your company?
Email us
What's
at
the portal?
team@ForeFlight, and we'll get them in the right place.
I'm sorry?
Team@ForeFlight.com, and we'll get them in the right place.
All right, thanks.
Right. Yep.
What kind of oceanic flying is that on board?
That is something we're looking into. It's a very common request we hear, and so I can't provide a timeline for when that'll become available, but it is definitely a high priority item.
Any plans on bring some of the dispatch functionality into the app, so we don't, our pilot's small plans, so dispatch doesn't do any of it, so it'd be a lot easier to do a lot of that planning inside the app, being able to see the dispatch screen.
Sure. Yeah, and certain capabilities are integrated. Like I mentioned, Runway Analysis is integrated. We don't have any plans to bring in some of these other things like tankering and EAPIS. One of the things about dispatch, one of the capabilities of that is that when you plan a flight in dispatch and you release it to the pilots, you can choose to release it as either read-only, where they can just view the details but they can't change it, or you can release it as editable. And the key reason we added that capability was to allow self-dispatching pilots to plan the flight on dispatch using its advanced capabilities and then just release it to their own device essentially and pick it up on mobile. But no, I don't think we're planning to. Certainly not all of these capabilities. We're not planning to bring them over. Over time, we have brought a number of capabilities like the avoiding FIR route constraint. That was something that used to be only in dispatch, and it is now supported in ForeFlight on its own. But in general, I'd say for that use case, we would say get dispatch, but just release the flights as editable for pilots.
On the way balance, any plans to put the graphical, like the floor plan on there, where you can just add?
Yeah, that's another common request. And again, I can't provide a timeline for when that might become available, but I know that the team is looking at that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any of our flight planning data that we that used, is that utilized by your company for analysis, and you use that data to, you know, share with other people, not our specifics, but like,
In the aggregate,
yeah.
sort of, yeah. I don't believe so. Travis, do you want to?
We do run our own internal metrics, but that's not shared anywhere outside the company. We never sell your data. If you're ever wondering what is done with the data we collect, you can Google ForeFlight privacy policy, and we spell it out, all out in plain language.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any more questions? No? All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. Please stop by the booth if you think of anything else.